Even though we've been talking about this leak for several years, I still almost can't believe it's real. If you haven't already heard, the Oblivion Remaster / remake, whatever you want to call it, was officially unveiled today, and it's actually playable right now as we speak. I mean, I remember playing Oblivion back in 2016 as a young teenager, and I was just in awe as to what it had to offer. It was this fantasy world brought to life in a medieval setting where you made all of the decisions. If you wanted to be a thief, you could do something like that. If you wanted to be this cat-lion hybrid-like person, well, then you could do that as well. And it just blew my mind back during the Xbox 360 era. There was just so many decisions that you could make in that game. The world was amazing, and the freedom. That's what I remember the most. It was all just so surreal at the time. So to see all that come to life here with a new Unreal Engine 5 remake in 2025 is almost unbelievable to me, and it's just such a massive, massive game. It's a whopping 120 gigabytes. And that's not the only surprise that comes along with its reveal. So we're going to talk about that today, because it's not just that I can't believe that this game is real, but also how it actually came to fruition. So stay tuned, and we're going to get into all of that. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and I truly do appreciate you. Let's go and get right into things, though, starting off with Nintendo and a new Switch online game. This is Fire Emblem: The Sacred Stones for the Game Boy Advance, and this is a pretty nice addition. This isn't necessarily the best or the most popular Fire Emblem game, but it's a somewhat special GBA title because this was actually only the second Fire Emblem game to release outside of Japan. Fire Emblem today might be one of the most well-known tactical RPG series, but it wasn't like that 20 years ago. Back then, I mean, we really more so knew the Fire Emblem games from characters like Roy and Marth in Smash Brothers. So for a lot of people outside of Japan, the Sacred Stones may have actually been their first Fire Emblem experience ever. And for that reason, it's a game that still holds a lot of nostalgia for several people out there. So if you want to revisit the cult classic, it'll be available to Switch Online Plus expansion pack subscribers now. And for that matter, Fire Emblem is a series that has aged very well over time. Now, speaking of Nintendo, they revealed a myriad of first-party titles for the Switch 2, including Donkey Kong Bonanza. But it's that game that seems to be garnering the most questions online. In typical Nintendo fashion, they've been a little hush-hush about which studio is actually working on that game, but most speculation seems to believe it comes from the Mario Odyssey team. Now, I'd say that's a fantastic sign for Donkey Kong Bonanza in terms of its quality, but depending on who you ask, that might also be a little bit deflating for anybody who was hoping for another 3D Mario. I've seen a lot of people online want that instead for year one, which personally, and I can only speak for myself here, but I'm not in that boat. For me, I'm glad that we're getting something fresh and new, and for that matter, I do want to point out that 3D Mario games don't always coincide with a new console launch. I've seen a lot of people just kind of assume that, but historically, Year 2 has also been a go-to for Nintendo as well, so I'd personally just say to remain patient. Nonetheless here, though, Nintendo's Doug Bowser was asked about a new 3D Mario, and he simply said, stay tuned. You know, we have a long catalog and a long list of intellectual property that I'm sure will make its way back to the platform. So a lot of people are taking this as a potential tease for a new 3D Mario, and okay, it very well could be. But again, for the first year, I'd simply just recommend to remain patient. We will absolutely, before the end of this generation, get a new 3D Mario at some point. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Mario Odyssey sold like 20 plus million copies. So I'd say just go out there and enjoy the first new 3D Donkey Kong game that we've gotten in over 20 years. To me, that's worth getting excited about. Okay, so let's go and get into the even more exciting news, and that's for Oblivion Remastered. Yesterday, I told you all it was 100% real. You know, they teased it. So I guess I'll just say today that it's now 200% real because not only did they reveal its gameplay and its details today, but also the rumors were true. It's playable as we speak. Now, like I said at the top of the video, I'm almost having a hard time believing that this is actually real, and not just because of nostalgia or because it's using Unreal Engine 5 for its new visuals, but also because of how they're releasing it. I would have never predicted that an Oblivion Remaster, out of all games, which is a legitimate remake in my eyes, would get a shadow drop. But here we are, and it's available on PC, it's available on Xbox, and it's available on the PlayStation 5. In fact, if you have Game Pass Ultimate, it's a day one launch. So, as usual, you Game Pass subscribers out there probably just living it up right now. But wait, it doesn't just stop there. It's also a PlayStation 5 Pro enhanced game, and it's only $50. Now, unfortunately, we still don't have official news for a physical release. Crossing my fingers for that. But $50 for a full-blown remake, which includes new visuals, new animations, new voiced dialogue, and so much more. I think that's pretty incredible when you think about it. I mean, here we have Nintendo. And they just revealed a $70 Wii U port with a few enhancements. The Switch 2 version of Breath of the Wild. And that doesn't even include its DLC, which makes that situation even worse. It's really just a few enhancements that are minor compared to what we're seeing here in Oblivion Remastered. So first off, I truthfully don't understand how anybody can defend Nintendo and their new game prices. I think it's ridiculous what they're doing. But at the same time, it also ironically shines a light on this much more consumer-friendly price that we're getting from Xbox and Bethesda. I mean, you can say what you want about Xbox and their consoles, but, they've actually been relatively consumer-friendly under Phil Spencer's leadership, and that includes this $50 remake that's also available in Game Pass Day 1. So there's also plenty of options to play it, including PlayStation and PC. Now, there's also a rumor that it's going to be announced for the Switch 2 at a later date, which, hopefully it will. But what I will say here, just right now, is that as expected, Oblivion is popping off over on Steam. I mean, you have to remember that this is a shadow drop. So a lot of people are still getting the news that this game even exists. It didn't get that huge marketing campaign with a big lead up of trailers. So a lot of people are still legitimately unaware of this game's existence. Yet here we are, and Oblivion has already surpassed 169,000 concurrent players on Steam. And more importantly, is that it's still rising as we speak. I mean, you also have to take into consideration here that this is also in the middle of the week. And historically, those numbers tend to grow during the weekend when more gamers are playing. So that number could still potentially continue to grow even more as the week continues to progress. So that's extremely impressive given that this is a shadow launch and also an early to middle of the week launch. If anything, its rapid success despite everything that's going against it just kind of goes to show you how beloved and just how popular the Elder Scrolls IP is still today. That bodes extremely well for the eventual Elder Scrolls 6. That game will legitimately be internet breaking. It's funny, though, because I saw a few people on Twitter where they said that Bethesda no longer has the same pull because, Starfield let a bunch of people down. Well, I'm going to point to this launch because these numbers seem to disagree, and I'll just simply leave it at that. However, I will say this much, though. I've yet to play the remake myself. This video comes first, but from what I've been hearing, the one downfall for this remake seems to be that its performance isn't necessarily perfect, and as you've kind of come to expect from other Bethesda games, there are bugs. Now, it has two options on consoles, a graphics mode and a performance mode, but even on the PlayStation 5 Pro, from what I've heard, it seems to have some kind of micro-stuttering issue on its performance mode. Now, hopefully that'll get fixed up sooner rather than later, but the usual Bethesda launch, quote-unquote Bethesda, seems to apply here. I mean, it's never really bothered me, but all I'm trying to say is that don't go into this expecting a perfect launch out of the gate. For anybody who's already played it, though, let me hear about your experience in the comments below and on what console and what your setup is like. So if you have a VRR display as one such example, does that fix its uneven performance? Either way, though, I'm really just kind of beside myself right now. I really just can't believe that we got a remake of Oblivion after all of these years. I just love this game back on the Xbox 360, and it's just so unbelievable to me that I get to dive back into its world once again all of these years later. Now I'm just kind of hoping that the quality meets my hype. Now, one last thing before we go, though. A few months ago, Sony launched a new rental program for their PlayStation 5 consoles in Japan. And apparently, that decision has been a smashing hit for them. Check this out. Reportedly, GEO, a Japanese company that specializes in buying, selling, and renting products, notably physical discs and video games, announced that its new PlayStation 5 rental service has been doing exceptionally well since it started on February 28th. 1 month following the initial rush, which coincided with the launch of Monster Hunter Wilds, half of GEO's 400 stores with rentable PlayStation 5s reported still renting out consoles at 100% operating capacity. And I mean, first off, the timing for this is near perfect. There's very few franchises out there that are as big as Monster Hunter is in Japan. So yeah, I imagine a lot of Japanese gamers are renting the PlayStation 5 for that game alone. Instead of having to go out and buy a brand new PlayStation 5 for several $100s, well, they can simply rent the PlayStation 5 for a 7 to 14 day period for as low as apparently $1 a day, which that's kind of crazy to think about, but admittedly, Monster Hunter is quite the grind fest, so, there is a good chance that gamers are holding on to their rental for more than just 14 days, and in that case, the price does go up to about $3.50 a day, so there are some caveats that comes along with a rental like this, but overall, I really like that Sony has this option available to Japanese customers. Hypothetically, if they were to launch a PlayStation 5 exclusive, well, Japanese customers would have this option available to them instead of having to go out and to buy a new console for just one single game. To me, I'm all for options. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode, but until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.